Hello, everyone. Today, we will thoroughly examine an immortal masterpiece that stands as the very wellspring of Western philosophy and has continued to stir human hearts for over 2,400 years. Plato's The Apology of Socrates. The stage is ancient Athens, a city where democracy flourished and learning and the arts reached their zenith. Yet it was in this city that an old philosopher was accused, put on trial, and sentenced to death. His name was Socrates. Though he never wrote a single book himself, he is known as the father of philosophy and is the single most influential figure on all of subsequent human intellect. The Apology of Socrates is the account written by his student, Plato, documenting his master's spiritual testimony during that trial, making it the most famous courtroom document in history. But this is no mere trial record. What is knowledge? What does it mean to live well? And how are we to face death? This is the final dialogue that Socrates, at the cost of his own life, delivered to the citizens of Athens and to us in the future. Let us now, together, listen to that sublime defense. Why was Socrates accused? The story begins with the shocking scene of the 70-year-old Socrates standing before the People's Court of Athens. The charges against him were primarily twofold. First, that he did not believe in the gods of the state, but rather in his own unique divinities, and thereby corrupted the youth. The second, while not a formal charge, lay at the root of the people's hatred. His practice of relentlessly exposing the ignorance of Athens' most powerful men, all while knowing that he himself was not wise. He would approach politicians, poets, and artisans on the street corners, men who believed themselves to be wise, and engage them in dialogue one after another. He would ask them fundamental questions. What is virtue? What is justice? What is beauty? But no one could answer his questions. Through dialogue, Socrates made them realize that they knew nothing. This act deeply wounded the pride of many powerful figures and earned him their intense animosity. The quest for knowledge of ignorance. But why did Socrates begin such a strange activity in the first place? It all started when his friend received an oracle from the temple of Apollo at Delphi, which proclaimed, "No one is wiser than Socrates." Socrates, who had never once thought of himself as wise, embarked on a journey to find someone with greater wisdom in order to understand the oracle's meaning. He sought out men with a reputation for wisdom and engaged them in conversation. However, he found that all of them were ignorant, wise men who believed they knew things that they did not, in fact, know. It was here that Socrates arrived at a decisive truth. He realized that in one respect, he might be slightly wiser than other men, in the fact that he knew nothing. This is the single most famous concept in the history of philosophy, knowledge of ignorance. He understood that the oracle meant that human wisdom is ultimately worthless, and that recognizing one's own ignorance is the first step toward true knowledge. He came to believe it was his divine mission to make people aware of this fact, and so he continued his dialogues. Not a defense, but a dialogue. In the courtroom, Socrates did not offer a typical apology or defense by begging for his life or trying to win sympathy. Instead, he boldly began a dialogue with his accusers and the Athenian citizens serving as his judges, just as he always did on the street corners. He logically refuted the charge of atheism by explaining that his entire life had been lived in obedience to a divine command, the oracle itself. Against the charge of corrupting the youth, he retorted, "I have never claimed to be anyone's teacher, nor have I ever accepted money. The youth simply took an interest in my conversations of their own free will." Furthermore, he drove his point sharply into the souls of the Athenian citizens. He harshly criticized them for caring only about money, honor, and reputation, while neglecting the improvement of their souls. He then claimed that a man like him was a gadfly sent by the gods to serve the state of Athens. just as a gadfly stings a large, lazy horse to keep it from becoming sluggish. He argued that his role was to constantly stir the souls of the Athenian people and guide them toward goodness. He warned them that putting him to death would be a great loss for Athens. This defiant attitude infuriated many of the judges. He had chosen to remain true to his philosophical way of life, rather than win an acquittal through his defense. The death sentence and the immortality of the soul. By a narrow margin, the vote found Socrates guilty, and he was sentenced to death. But even upon hearing the verdict, his composure did not waver in the slightest. He rejected all alternative punishments proposed by his friends to escape death, such as exile or paying a fine. He reasoned that if he fled to another country, he would only continue his dialogues there and be hated just the same. Death, he mused, might be a state of nothingness, a dreamless, eternal sleep, free from all sensation. If so, would that not be a wonderful thing? Either way, he concluded, death is nothing to be feared. For him, the only thing that mattered was not the life of the body, but that the soul should be good. It was this conviction that allowed him to overcome the fear of death. The final words and the eternal question. At the end of the trial, Socrates addressed his accusers and his judges, quietly but with immense dignity. "You who have condemned me," he said, "a swift and severe retribution will come upon you for killing me." But these were not words of a curse. It was a prophecy that, though they could kill the pursuer of truth, they could never kill truth itself. Rather, his death would awaken even more young men to the quest for truth. And then he spoke his famous final words. "The hour of departure has arrived, and we go our ways, I to die, and you to live. Which of us goes to the better fate is known only to God." With these words, he drank the cup of hemlock and died peacefully. The death of Socrates was a physical defeat, but a complete spiritual victory. His life and his death left an indelible mark on his student Plato and became the mighty headspring of all subsequent Western philosophy. Plato's The Apology of Socrates. It is the immortal record of a single philosopher who, without bowing to power or the majority, lived and died according to the voice of his own soul. This story asks us, 2,400 years later, are you merely living, or are you living well? Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please give a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next video.